The starliner Artemis drifted through the inky expanse of subsector 47G, its silver-hued hull catching ghostly reflections of distant nebulae. From the vantage of the bridge's panoramic viewport, space seemed an endless canvas of pinpricks and color, serene, indifferent, and utterly vast. Yet inside the ship, tension crackled through every corridor like static before a storm. Captain Celine Voss stood at the command console, fingers dancing over haptic controls as she traced the latest data feed. Her slate-grey uniform belt bore the insignia of Earth's United Federation of Planets, 3 interlocking rings symbolizing unity, knowledge, and peace. Those ideals felt distant now. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady but low. Lieutenant Amina Kimura's holographic display shimmered to life beside Celine's shoulder. Blue lines of trajectory and red blips of hostile contacts streamed across the 3-dimensional map. "Multiple contacts emerging from the Perseus corridor, Captain. 4 Zelnari battle groups, each larger than a standard frigate squadron. They're maintaining stealth profiles at 0-point energy levels. Our sensors only get snapshots every 17 seconds. Celine's jaw tightened. The Zelnari, an ancient warrior race known for their ruthless expansionism, had pushed humanity's frontier worlds to the brink of collapse over the past decade. Despite numerous ceasefire accords, their incursions into human-allied sectors had grown bolder. She recalled the carnage on Rhea 9, where orbital bombardments rendered verdant colonies into charred wastelands. Rumors of Zelnari experiments on prisoners, of biological weapons tested on defenseless civilians, haunted every captain's nightmares. In the center of the bridge, Lord Thalrax Rhaegar, Zinarch Council emissary, hovered with his ritualistic grace. His violet skin glowed faintly beneath the flicker of control panels. The crown of bioluminescent spines atop his skull pulsed gently, indicating agitation. "Captain Voss," he said, voice resonant with calm authority, "this escalation is needless. My people seek only to secure resources for our worlds. We can negotiate an equitable exchange." Selena cut her eyes to Rhaegar, her heart pounding behind her ribs. She had to balance diplomacy with deterrence or risk embroiling the entire frontier in all-out war. "Resources are earned through cooperation, not conquest," she replied. "And your so-called exchanges leave entire star systems uninhabitable. Our borders are inviolate." Below decks, the Artemis's engine shifted as Chief Engineer Arjun Patel monitored the plasma conduits in engineering. He ran a hand through his dark curls, brow furrowed. The ship had already seen 10 years of near-constant patrols. Microfractures in the superstructure were multiplying, coolant loops occasionally flaring into emergency shutdowns. He adjusted, a phase capacitor sighing as the readout flickered back into safe parameters. Even so, the Artemis was a veteran vessel, and its days of frontline duty were numbered. Suddenly, the ship shuddered, an almost imperceptible ripple at first, then a violent jolt that sent pads clattering across the deck. Warning lights exploded in red arcs. Klaxons wailed. "Report!" Celine barked. Lieutenant Kimura's eyes widened as her hands flew over the controls. "Energy surge detected on port quarter. Shields are spiking, then collapsing. Unidentified waveform. It's not phasic, not gravimetric. It's something new." Celine's pulse kicked up. "Could be a stealth pulse to disable our sensors. Brace for impact." She turned to Rhaegar. "Remain calm. Any panic on this bridge will cost lives." Rhaegar inclined his head. His voice, when it came, carried an edge of genuine surprise. "This is unprecedented. My scouts reported only routine reconnaissance." A second pulse slammed into the Artemis, rippling along the hull like a death knell. The viewport stuttered with static, then cleared, revealing a pale, shimmering distortion. 1,000 kilometers away. It twisted space itself, an expanding bubble that danced with shifting lights, as though reality were melting. Temporal anomaly, muttered Kimura, voice trembling. Prepare countermeasures, Selene commanded, even as dread pooled in her stomach. Shut down non-essential power, divert every watt to the forward shields. Arjun, I need those reactor buffers at maximum. Down in engineering, Patel's console erupted in alarms. Core integrity at 50%. If we push too hard, we risk a breach. Selene hesitated for only a heartbeat before answering. We take that risk. Hold the line. A third pulse, stronger, more focused, slammed into the Artemis's bow. The ship groaned. The deck beneath Selene's boots quaked. Alarms joined the klaxons in a mechanical dirge. On the viewport, the anomaly twisted again, and for an instant, shimmering silhouettes emerged inside it. Sleek shapes like scythe blades moving in formation. 4 Xelnari battle cruisers, cloaked in temporal distortion, flickered in and out. Of perception, they'd weaponized the anomaly itself, turning it into a delivery system. Selene's stomach went cold. They've weaponized time, she whispered. We're the target. Rhaegar's eyes widened. They're tearing through causality fields, defying every known treaty on warfare. Selene drew herself up. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Humanity's frontier was under threat not only of invasion, but of annihilation through forces beyond comprehension. She straightened her shoulders, voice resonant and unyielding. Lieutenant, she said, open a channel to the Xelnari High Command. Tell them, cease all hostilities now, or we will respond with overwhelming force. You want war? Then face annihilation. Her words echoed through the bridge, a defiant clarion in the heart of darkness. Outside, the Artemis braced itself against the next temporal blast, and Selene Voss prepared to fight for humanity's very existence. The Artemis rattled under the onslaught of dark matter pulses, each strike rocking the ship like a thunderclap in a canyon. On the bridge, crimson warning lights flickered in staccato bursts. Smoke tendrils curled from overloaded conduits, and the acrid scent of burnt circuitry burned in Selene Voss's nostrils, shields at 10% and falling. Lieutenant Kimura shouted. Her fingers flew over the holotable, issuing point defense commands as secondary shield capacitors spat energy like dying embers. If we can't stabilize now, we'll lose structural integrity. Selene's gaze swept the hollow display, where the 4 Xelnari cruisers rotated in an ominous crescent, their cruel blades of armor gleaming with lethal intent. Even cloaked behind their temporal field, their presence was inescapable. She swallowed, tasting. Real. Divert all auxiliary power to the forward shield bank. Target their lead vessel's distortion emitter. If we can knock that out, their cloak will flicker. Aye, Captain, ensued a chorus of assent. Across the bridge, Lord Rhaegar's violet spines glowed brighter, each bioluminescent pulse. Betraying his agitation, he approached Selene, voice low. Their commanders are not unified. 3 of the 4 cruisers contest the use of temporal weapons. They fear the consequences. If we press our advantage swiftly, we may fracture their formation. Selene's steel-grey eyes met his calmly. Then let's give them reason to hesitate. She keyed her comm badge. All hands, target the lead cruiser's temporal drive. Focus fire on the emitter points. Her words snapped through the corridors like a whip. Down in turbine deck, Chief Engineer Arjun Patel stood in a haze of steam and sparks. He had rerouted power from the life support relays to the shields as ordered, but every overclock risked a reactor breach. He barked over the comm. Bridge, I can't sustain more than 20% overload anymore, and we vent core exhaust directly into engineering. Selene's calm voice crackled in his earpiece. Arjun, hold as long as you can. We need that shield spike now. She cut the channel and turned back to the holodisplay. Kimura, stand by for my signal. The Artemis lurched again as a 4th dark matter blast hammered the port side. G-force pinched Selene's gut. Panels sparked, and a shudder ran down her spine. She gritted her teeth and waited. "Now!" she barked. Kimura executed the order. In a dazzling burst, the Artemis's forward batteries unleashed a volley of phasic disruptors interlaced with proton lances. The bolts streaked through space, converging on the lead Zelnari cruiser's shimmering hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lead ship convulsed as its distortion emitter overloaded. A blinding flash engulfed it, and as the light faded, one side of the cruiser appeared to slough off, revealing the jagged skeleton of its inner plating. "We did it!" Kimura exclaimed, voice elated. "Maintain pressure," Selene ordered. "Push them into disarray." The remaining cruisers staggered, their formation losing precision. One ship banked sharply, attempting an evasive maneuver, but another stray disruptor struck its flank, sending it tumbling away, engines sputtering. The third cruiser veered off to provide cover, but with its temporal cloaking faltering, it was now an exposed target. Below decks, Patel's consoles shrieked under the strain of the emergency overload. He glanced at the reactor core gauge, climbing into the red. Sweat beaded on his forehead. With a guttural roar, he engaged the emergency vent. A plume of superheated plasma hissed into a containment manifold, triggering a cascade of alarms. "Engineering to bridge," he barked. "Core pressure is critical. We're venting. Get us out of here." Selene's voice crackled back. "Hold! And tight, Arjun. We're going for a boarding deterrent." She turned to Rhaegar. "Their last cruiser is enraged. They'll try a kamikaze run. We need to scare them off." The emissary inclined his head and tapped a sequence into his wrist. "Console." Moments later, the Artemis's comm channels flared with a guttural, resonant Zelnari war cry, magnified and looped in an eerie echo. Aboard the approaching cruiser, Selene imagined the momentary freeze as its crew heard their own battle chant, twisted into a weapon. Then, with one final pulse of blinded fury, the cruiser veered off, not toward the Artemis's battered bow, but away, limping into open space. "They're breaking off!" Kimura cried, relief flooding her voice. Selene allowed herself a breath. The Artemis trembled, but it still floated, a testament to human resolve and ingenuity. She keyed the comm to all hands. "Report damage. We've got enemy ships in retreat, but expect pursuit." Rhaegar floated to her side. "Impressive, Captain. You've shown them that humanity will not bow." Selene swallowed the taste of victory and steeled herself. "We did what we had to, but this is only the beginning. They'll regroup, and they still have one more leader among them." She tapped her comm again. "Open a direct channel to the damaged cruiser. I want their commander's face on my view screen." Minutes later, the battered vessel's command deck flickered into view. A single Zelnari officer, a sinewy figure with a fractured crest, regarded Selene with furious violet eyes. "This is Captain Selene Voss of the United Federation starliner Artemis," Selene declared. "You have tested our resolve. Withdraw all forces or risk complete annihilation. This is your final warning." The Zelnari commander's mandibles clicked in disbelief. For a long, suspended moment, only static answered. Then, with a final, contemptuous snarl, he severed the link. Selene lowered the comm. "They refuse negotiation," she said quietly. Rhaegar's biolights dimmed. "Then they have chosen war," Selene nodded. "And we will give them nothing less than the annihilation we promised." She turned back to the holo display, plotting the Artemis's next move. As the crippled Zelnari fleet drifted into the darkness, Selene Voss prepared to lead humanity's counterstroke, an offensive born not of vengeance, but of survival. The Zeta-9 cluster lay before the Alliance fleet like a jeweled battlefield. Swirling cerulean gases mingled with streaks of stardust, while ancient planetoids orbited in silent vigil. Admiral Selene Archer's flagship, Intrepid Dawn, led 4 cruiser wings and 6 escort frigates into position, phalanx formation shimmering in the nebula's iridescent glow. Every sensor glowed red with contact alerts. 10 Aegis-class human cruisers arrayed in a perfect defensive circle around the new cluster's gravity-stabilized waypoint. "Commencing final approach," Archer intoned. "Phase conduits locked. All wings on my mark. Engage ion net torpedoes." Her voice was calm, betraying none of the tension rippling through her command crew. "Mark!" came the terse response from Lieutenant Harrow at Tactical. A volley of torpedoes shot forth, their glowing traces weaving a lattice of charged filaments aimed at the pylons of the nearest Aegis cruiser. For a heartbeat, the vessel's cobalt-blue shields quivered under the assault. Then, in a stunning feat of engineering, the cruiser vanished, its hull receding into a quantum slipstream without so much as a warning flare. "Impossible," Malik muttered, jaw clenched. "They've integrated a slip reactivation module at each junction. We sever one conduit and another instantly reroutes the power." Archer's fingers snapped across her console. "Abort boarding. Procedure. All units pivot to defensive posture, target their launch bays, disable fighter deployments." At that moment, the nebula's gas currents refracted the starlight, revealing dozens of human slipskimmer fighters bursting into existence. Like bolts of cosmic lightning, sleek and razor-thin, they darted forward, micro-singularity torpedoes trailing behind them like comet tails. "Hold fire until they cluster," Archer ordered. "Then unleash the plasma net." As the fighters closed, the Alliance ships unleashed a web of searing plasma that trapped half the skimmers in molten grids. But the survivors weaved through the gaps, unleashing torpedoes that impacted against shields with thunderous concussions. Warning klaxons blared across every bridge. The intrepid Dawn shuddered under the onslaught. "Bridge to engineering," Archer snapped. "Stabilize shield harmonics and prepare countermeasure bursts on my command." "Shields at 40%, came the weary reply. "Countermeasures charging at 29%. Archer's gaze hardened. Beyond the skirmish, the human flagship Pioneer's Dawn loomed, its slipstream reactor glowing like a sapphire. "Sun." It drifted into Alliance sensor range and released a pulse of folded space energy that rippled through the nebula currents, collapsing several Alliance frigate warp cores in a silent yet devastating wave. "Evasive maneuver Alpha 6, Archer shouted. "All hands brace for impact." The fleet scattered amid the nebula's swirling tendrils, ships executing looping evasive thrusts to avoid the folded space blast. The intrepid Dawn twisted on its axis, swinging broadside to bear its heaviest batteries. "Open a channel to Pioneer's Dawn," Archer commanded, voice echoing with steely resolve. "If we're to settle this, let it be face to face." Her comm officer hesitated, then keyed the sequence. The holoscreen flickered, and Admiral Celine Archer's own stern visage appeared against the human flagship's darkened bridge. For a long moment, two stars of command stared across the gulf of space, each measuring the other's will. Then Archer spoke. "This conflict gains us nothing. Stand down your fighters. We can negotiate terms even now." The human admiral's eyes met hers, unwavering. "Your tactics have proven our point. You do not understand Slipstream, but we respect strength where we find it. We will withdraw, this time unpursued, on the condition that you convene a joint technical council at Orenthia within 3 standard days." Archer's hand hovered over the engage control. Around her, the bridge crew held collective breath. At last, she nodded. "Agreed. Fleet, hold position. Countermeasures. Deploy." A hush fell as the nebula's glow settled back into silent splendor. The human ships phased out in a serene pulse of light, retreating into folds of subspace. Before the Alliance could muster pursuit, on the intrepid Dawn, Admiral Archer exhaled for the first time in hours. The gambit had faltered, but a fragile ceasefire held. Beyond the shimmer of ion nets and folded space blasts lay a new, uneasy respect. In the aftermath of battle, both sides had glimpsed the promise, and peril of humanity's enigmatic power. And as the Alliance fleet regrouped, one truth resonated in Archer's mind. In this vast ocean of stars, the war for the future of slipstream technology had only just begun. The Artemis drifted in the silent aftermath of battle, its hull scarred but its spirit resolute. Around them, what had been an apocalyptic canyon of wrecked Zelnari cruisers drifted in fractured constellations, like fallen titans paused in eternal sleep. Within the Starliner's corridors, med teams administered triage to the wounded, and damage control crews sealed breaches and re-wove ruptured power conduits. Every footstep echoed a hard-earned relief. Captain Celine Voss stood on the bridge, flanked by Lord Thalrax Rhaegar. The bridge's panoramic viewport framed an austere tableau, civilian transports carrying survivors of besieged colonies, relief ships in transit, and, beyond them all, silent Zelnari vessels signaling their surrender. Behind each of those chevrons lay stories of fear, grief, and a begrudging respect earned in the crucible of combat. "Life support at full capacity," reported Lieutenant Kimura. "Medical teams are requesting additional berths for refugees, transferred from the planet below." Selene nodded. "Allocate all available quarters. We'll host them until they can be repatriated or relocated." She turned to Rhaegar, whose bioluminescent spines glowed softly. "Have the Zelnari envoy shuttles been cleared for docking?" "Yes," he replied. "They await only your signal." His voice carried the weight of his people's pride, now tempered by newfound humility. Selene drew a steady breath. "Open the docking bays and send a welcoming party, no blasters drawn." She keyed the comm. "This is Captain Voss. All weapons to stun protocols only. We want cooperation, not provocation." In Hangar Bay 3, a contingent of Artemis, Marines stood at attention, rifles at readiness but muzzles down. The gate hissed open to reveal the Zelnari delegation. 3 figures in ceremonial robes, their violet skin gleaming beneath the bay lights. At their head was Commander Silar, whose shattered crest still bore the scars of combat. His mandibles clicked nervously as he stepped forward. Selene extended her hand, gloved in white regulation, and offered a small, genuine smile. "Welcome aboard the Artemis. You have our gratitude for choosing to negotiate rather than perish in the void." Silar inclined his head, eyes wary but not unkind. "We honor your mercy, Captain. We have lost much, but perhaps gained something more valuable." He produced a data paddle and presented it without another word. Inside the flagship's Grand Conference Chamber, the human and Zelnari delegations gathered around a holographic table. Selene presided from one end, Rhaegar stood beside her as advisor and liaison. Silar and his council took the opposite side, flanked by their own emissaries, scientists, philosophers, even a reluctant warlord whose armor was still pitted by Artemis plasma fire. As the discussions began, ancient grievances were aired in measured tones. The Zelnari spoke of resource scarcity on their homeworlds, of dying stars that demanded expansion at any cost. Humanity recounted terraforming efforts that had unwittingly encroached on Zelnari migratory paths, and mining operations that had disrupted the warp currents vital to their culture. Each revelation carried pain, but also a glimmer of understanding. Hours passed in a mosaic of debate and compromise. Mutual research stations in jointly governed systems, shared conservation of nebulae rich in exotic elements, a pledge to dismantle all temporal weapon research facilities. When at last the final articles were agreed upon, obligations written in the crystalline dialect of the Xenarch and the polyglot codex of the United Federation, Selene rose. "With this accord," she intoned, voice steady, "we bind our fates not in fear, but in partnership. May this treaty stand as a testament to what can be achieved when conscience prevails over conquest." She reached out, and Sylar placed his hand upon hers, warm, tenacious, and hopeful. Later, in the stillness of the Artemis's observation lounge, Selene stood alone before the viewport. Below, the refugees disembarked into waiting shuttles. Beyond, Zelnari vessels prepared to withdraw or to assist in reconstruction efforts. Somewhere across the void, other races listened to the echoes of the treaty broadcast, weighing their own choices. Rhaegar joined her, his spines pulsing in soft luminescence. "You have done the improbable, Captain. You have turned the tide of hatred into collaboration." Selene glanced at him, exhaustion mingling with quiet triumph. "We bought time to heal, to restore, to learn from our folly. But lasting peace is a path, not a destination." She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "I'm proud of what we've done, and wary of what comes next." Rhaegar's mandibles clicked in understanding. "I will carry these hopes back to the Xenarch Council. You have given us a final chance." As the Artemis set her course for Solara Prime, burdened with treaties, wounded souls, and fragile trust, Selene Voss allowed herself a rare moment of optimism. The frontier lay before them, vast and uncertain as ever. But now, humanity stood not alone, but side by side with an alien race that had once sworn their destruction. And in that fragile alignment of wills, a new chapter of galactic history began, one where the spectre of annihilation had been held at bay by the bold cry of a single human captain. "You want war? Then face annihilation." Rejecting both paths of blind fury and unquestioning surrender, she had carved a third way, one of integrity, courage, and the enduring promise of peace.